We are back at the Bellagio. The last video I got wrecked, losing $5,000. But I went back and looked at the game tape, and I actually don't think I made as many mistakes as I originally thought. There's very few hands I would have played dramatically differently. You know, I missed a couple of bets sometimes. But I think, I ultimately got unlucky in a few spots. Hopefully that's not optimistic thinking, but it gives me even more confidence that I'll do well today with the cards turning in my favor, hopefully. So, about to hop into the game, and I'll see you on the other side.
But tonight, don't call it a comeback.
We kick off the action with Drawmaha, and I start off with aces up in my hand. Now that's how you're supposed to enter Drawmaha pot, and I should be in good shape to get at least half. I 3-bet to let them know I'm not playing around today, and I get 2 callers. The flop comes 4-10 deuce. I've got a gut shot to the wheel, and I'm feeling pretty good about my hand. I lead out for $80. Both players call. I toss my 8 to try to improve to a full house. One of my opponents draws 2, and the other opponent draws 3. This is good news because unless a player was dealt trips, I should be ahead on my draw hand. I catch a 5 on the draw, which doesn't improve my hand and steals one of my outs from the Omaha board. The turn is another 10, which downgrades my straight draw. I'm undeterred though, and I bet 160. Both players call. The river is a 7 of spades, which doesn't help me make my Omaha hand, but I still bet my draw hand to try to collect money from the third player, only to find out my opponent, who drew 3, caught the third queen he needed to best me. That's not how I wanted to start the session. Being outdrawn in that fashion feels like a slap to the face.
What did the 5 fingers say to the face? What? Slap!
We stick with Drawmaha for the next hand, and I'm dealt king, queen, jack, 10-8. I've got an open-ended straight draw in my hand, and several cards that might take down the Omaha side. I'm also on the button, which is always a good thing. So I raise and I'm in for 240. The flop comes 3 king 4, which isn't that exciting, although I do have top pair. It checks around and I toss my 8 to try and improve. Christmas came early this year though, because I make the hard to beat Broadway straight in my hand by drawing the ace. But Santa was extra generous because he also gave me another king on the turn for trips. I must have been a good boy.
It's coming to town. Santa! Oh my God!
It checks to me and I bet 160, only to get raised. Oh my God, this is awesome. I kick it up to 480 and one player makes the call. The gifts just keep on coming as the river is the queen of hearts, giving me a boat on the board to go along with my straight. I fire off another bet of 160 and show my opponent the bad news. That hand was so awesome, I started to feel like I wasn't deserving. Santa was definitely too generous, and it was like I was stealing from him.
When I got home, I bugged, 'cause under the tree was a letter from Santa and a dose for me.
We keep the comeback going with another hand of Drawmaha, and I'm dealt king, 3, 4, 5. I call the 160 in position, and we head to the flop, heads up. The flop comes 8 king 10 with 2 spades. I've got a set of kings and a flush draw. I lead out for a bet of $80 and get called. I draw 2 and catch another king, giving me a set on the board and a set in my hand. The turn is a 5, which shouldn't make much difference. I lead out for 160, feeling pretty good about the possibilities of scooping. The river is an offsuit 9, and I lead out for 160 and get called. Unfortunately for me, the 9 gave my opponent a king high straight with jack queen in his hand, and I end up only winning my money back. That is quite deflating. Hey, before we dive into the next hand, I want to ask you a really quick question. Are you ready to learn how to play mixed poker games? If so, click on the link below in the description. I built a community called Year of the Wager Poker, where I teach people how to play the basics like Deuce to 7 and Badugi, as well as more advanced games like Drawmaha or Badeucey, and all types of other mixed poker games. Listen, I played No Limit Hold'em for more than 10 years every single day, And quite frankly, I got burnt out looking for the same 2 cards to enter the pot. Mixed games brought my love of poker back, and I think you'll enjoy them as well. Go ahead and join the community. It's free to join, and I think you'll have a lot of fun learning these games. Thanks. We shift the game to deuce to 7 triple draw, and I'm dealt deuce 5-5 king ace. I call the bet for 160, and we head into the first draw, heads up with my opponent drawing 2, and I'm drawing 3. The first draw allows me to marginally improve with 2-3-5, so I call the bet for $80. My opponent is drawing 1, and I'm drawing 2. I improve once again on the second draw to 2-3-4-5-5. I call the 160, and we are both drawing 1. I make a 10 high hand on the last draw and call the 160 to keep my opponent honest, only to find out he made an 8 on the last draw. I wish I would have let him lie to me. On the next hand, the game switches to deuce to 7 Razz. I start off with 3-7 in the hole and a 6 door card. I like what I see and complete the bet to $80. The action is heads up. I catch a 10 on 4th Street and call my opponent's bet for $80. The deuce on 5th Street is a great card, but my opponent is quick to bet 160. Perhaps he thinks the deuce paired me, but it didn't, so I make the call. However, the 7 on 6th Street did pair me. That's obviously not what we wanted, but my opponent made a pair of 8s on 6th Street, so we both slow down and check. The deuce on the river double pairs me, making my hand 10 high. I'm not sure if that's good enough to win, so I check once again and my opponent reveals that he made a jack low, so I scoop the pot. We stick with deuce to 7 Razz, and this time I've got a deuce in the door with the magical 5-7 in the hole. The player to my right completes the bet with a 4 showing, so I raise it up to 160. He 3-bets to 240, and he's a pretty good player, so he obviously has a monster as well with an obvious deuce in the hole. I make the call, and it's up to the poker gods now. He makes a 3 on 4th Street, and I make a 10. Not the way you want to start off, but maybe the 3 paired him. I can't give up yet when the bet is still $80, so I make the call. He makes a 6 on 5th Street, and I make a 9. As he should, he leads out for 160. In theory, he could already have a 7 or 8 low. I should be folding at this point, but I do have a 2-5 and a 7, all cards he would need. This is what you call being married to the potential of your hand instead of the reality of it. I should without a doubt be folding at this point, but instead I make the terrible call. I make an ace on 6th Street when he catches paint. It just gets worse and worse. At this point, there is no way I can win the hand unless he is paired up and he is just repping his strong board. The rule book says this should be an automatic fold, but I was never one for following the rules, so I make the suspect call.
Let me tell you something. You're suspect.
The river pairs my 5, which means I have a 10 low hand. I know I've lost, but I call for pot odds, and as suspected, he made an 8 low on 5th Street. I knew he made his hand, and I didn't want to believe it, and I paid quite the price for not wanting to face the obvious truth.
You can't handle the truth.
The opportunity and trap in stud games is you should rep certain hands based on the door cards that are showing, but if you're not careful, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. We have the potential for that to happen in this next hand of deuce to 7 Razz, where I have a pair of 4s in the hole and a 7 showing. It's a terrible starting hand, but I've got the lowest card in the door, so I complete the bet to $80 and get 2 callers. 4th Street brings me a 9, and one of my opponents catches an ace, which is good for me, while the other catches a 3. I bet 80 and we eliminate 1 player. We only have 1 to go. The 5 on 5th Street is a good card for me, so I lead out for 160, and that gets the job done. I take down the pot by playing the strength of my board. The game switches to Badeucey, and I'm in the big blind with ace 2, 3, 5, 10 with an ace 2, 3 rainbow. That's the type of hand that I dream about in my sleep, So I 4-bet to 320. We are heads up and we're both drawing 1. The dealer wastes absolutely no time in giving me the killer 6 of spades, which gives me a 6 high Badugi and a 6-5 in the lowball hand. I lead out for $80 and get the call. I stand pat, and what's crazy is my opponent decides to stand pat too.
Some people are so far behind in a race that they actually believe they're leading.
Yeah, that's cute.
We get 2 more bets of 160 in with a call, and I turn over the winner. The game switches once again to Archie, and I'm in the big blind with ace, jack 9, 5, with the community card being the ace of clubs. Having a set using the community card for your high hand is a big advantage, but you need to be careful not to get bamboozled or hoodwinked. I 4-bet to 320 out of position and get 2 callers. I draw 3 and the other players draw 2 and 1 respectively. It's my opinion that when you 4-bet and draw 3 in Archie, that your hand is face up. The only hand you should have is 2 of the same community card, and you are either trying to make quads or a full house. The first draw brings me a 10, 9, and a 4, neither of which look like an ace to me. However, I continue to bet $80 because the pot isn't going to build itself. The button raises to 160 and everyone calls. The second draw is what we in the business call the 6th sense, because
I see dead people.
Okay, I just made that up. It's not really a thing, but maybe it'll catch on. I did catch 2 queens though, and that means I've got a full house and my opponents better be going for the low because they don't stand a chance against the ladies I just added to my hand. I fire a bet for 160 and the button, the fine gentleman that he is, raises the bet to 320, allowing me to re-raise to 480 glorious dollars. He then re-raises again to 640. And I start to wonder, is there any way I'm beat? He most likely has the nut low and he is executing the squeeze play on our third opponent, which then means I'm supposed to cap the bet at 5, but I chicken out and make the call, but it does keep the third player in the pot. There's over $2,000 in the pot right now, and I'm pat with a monster. What's amazing to me is the player in the middle of the squeeze is still drawing 1. How can you still be drawing at this point? I lead out for a bet of 160, and at this point we finally lose the middle player who didn't make his draw and the button just calls. I turn over the winner for the high hand and the button turns over a 2-way low as expected with a straight to the 6.
I love it when a plan comes together.
We shift the game to Badeucey for the next hand, and I'm in the small blind. Several players at the game have changed and the table has gotten much easier with some calling stations in the game. I start off with 2-3-3-6-9 with a draw to the 6 Badugi. I call the raise from the button and draw 2. We're heads up. Once again, I draw good immediately, making a 6 high Badugi with a 7-6 low. The low isn't great, but the Badugi is optimal. I lead out for a bet of $80. I get the call and stay pat. My opponent draws 2. I lead out for 160 and get the call. Surprisingly, my opponent also stays pat. I bet 160 again and get the call, and I've got the winner. I've won some pretty big pots and I feel like I should be up quite a bit, but I'm treading water around the even mark because I'm losing a lot of small hands that add up in between the big wins. We stick with Badeucey for the next hand and I'm dealt an 8 Badugi with a second ace. I like what I see and I 3-bet to 240 only to get raised to 320. I make the call. An 8 Badugi is good, but it's too high of a card to likely scoop after 3 draws. I toss the second ace hoping to get a low diamond. Instead, I make a 7, which feels very dangerous. I call the $80 and the initial raiser stays pat. I can only hope they don't have a Badugi because I'm pretty sure my 8-7 won't win the ace to 5 side of the pot. I stay pat as well and the third player draws 2. The initial bettor, who is a European pro, bets another 160 and I'm starting to wonder if I should break my hand. I call the 160 and reluctantly stay pat. The initial raiser fires off one more bet for 160. and I'm pretty sure I'm cooked. He turns over the 6-6 with no ace, and I lose. We switch up the game to Ari, and I'm in the big blind. The community card is a 6, and I've got one of those with 2 ladies to go with it.
Hey, lady!
The calling station raises it up to 160, and the button 3 bets to 240. I make the call, and I'm drawing 2 with 4 players. I need to catch a queen or another 6 to make my full house. I catch neither on the first draw, and it checks around, which is good for the bankroll. I draw 2 again, as does everyone else. I catch a third pair with 2 jacks, which makes my hand extremely weird. How do you have 3 pair in a 5-card game? Welcome to the mix, ladies and gentlemen. I lead out for 160, and the entire delegation from the Poker Peacekeeping Corps calls. I stay pat as a semi-bluff, and everyone draws to improve. I check the river, and the player to my left leads out for 160, which is alarming. I make the call, and he turns over 6s full of 4s, allowing him to scoop the pot. We stick with Ari for the next hand, and I've got 3 to the wheel on the button with a community king of spades. I'm going for the low hand, so the community card isn't as much of a factor. I call 160, and we head to the first draw with me taking 2. I've got 2 opponents. The first draw brings me a 5 and a king, which causes a dilemma. I've got 4 to the 2-way wheel, but I will still need to catch another card. But I also now have a pair of kings for the high hand using the community card. A pair of kings isn't a strong hand in Archie, so I decide to stay on my original path and go for the low.
Remember, stay on the path.
I call the 160 and draw 1. I pair my deuce, which is not what I needed. Everyone is still in the hand, and I make another call for 160, drawing 1 once again. On the final draw, I catch the queen, which means I don't even qualify for the low. Staying on the path led me astray. I make the fold. We play yet another hand of Ari with a 6 of clubs to the community card. I call the raise of 240 with 2, 3, 5, 6, 9. I've got a gut shot straight draw for the low and a pair of 6s. I'm drawing 1, and we have 4 players heading into the first draw. The king on the first draw is a brick. I call the $80 and give it another shot, as does the rest of the cohort. Once again, I brick the draw with the jack, and once again, I call the 160, trying to keep Bob Hope alive. And once again, everybody and their mama stays in the hand. I missed the straight on the final draw, but I make a 7 low. Everyone but the straddler was drawing, so maybe I've got a shot at half the pot. Or maybe not, because someone other than the straddler turns over a 7-5 low with a 7 high straight using the community 6. What in the entire world just happened? I'm not giving up on Ari yet, so I find myself back in the action with the ace of diamonds for the community card, and I've been dealt a pair of ladies with another ace. I'm feeling the love.
Love, exciting and new.
And I think I can improve to a boat. I raise it up to 160. The calling station raises it to 240, and I 4-bet to 320, drawing 2. We've got 3 players. Each of my opponents drew 1. I missed my draw, but I call the initial 80 bet and draw 2 again. I miss again, and I call again, committing another 160 to the middle. The better stays pat, and I draw 2. With the calling station drawing 1, I take a look at the cards, and
Love, exciting and new.
I told you I was feeling the love. I raise it to 320, and we lose the calling station. I chop the pot with my opponent, showing the super strong straight to the 6. I was lucky to catch the ticket to ride on the
Love, exciting and new.
Don't you love that theme song? We've got another hand of Ari where the community card is the 5 of spades, and I'm dealt ace, king, king, 5, 6 with 4 hearts. I call the raise, and 3 players are in the hand. I draw 1 and hit the queen of hearts right away. I lead out for 80, and both players call. I stay pat, and my opponents take 2 and 1 respectively. I lead out for 160 and both players call. I stay pat again and their draws have not changed. I lead out again for 160. I get called by one player and the flush stands the test of time, allowing me to scoop the pot. The game switches to Badeucey and I'm dealt 357 rainbow in the big blind. I raise to 240 and get two callers that are drawing two. On the first draw, I bring in a deuce of spades, which wasn't the heart that I was looking for, but it was much needed regardless, so I lead out for $80. Both players call and I'm drawing one while they are still drawing two. The king is a brick, but I bet my draw advantage for 160 and get one fold. I toss the king and try to improve on the final draw. I pull in the six of diamonds, which could only look better if it were the six of hearts. I lead out for 160 and get called. Unfortunately, it's not a scoop as my opponent made a Badugi when I didn't, so we chopped the pot and split the third player's chips. The game switches to ultimate 5-card double board Omaha. I'm dealt ace 2 4 6 king. I've got a good low draw with a suited ace. I'm in the big blind and I check. Four of us head to the flop. The flop comes 5 queen 10 and 7 2 3 with a diamond draw. I've got the nut low on one board and a gut shot straight draw to Broadway on the other with the nut flush draw. I lead out for $80 and get two callers. The turn pairs both boards, which gives me trip deuces to go along with my nut low, so I bet out for 160 and keep both callers. The river brings the king and a 6, which gives me deuces full of kings to go with my nut low. That's pretty good, so I bet 160. However, I get raised to 320. Did the river change the outcome? I don't see how, so I re-raise to 480 and get called. I turn over my full house with the nut low, only to find out my opponent had pocket kings and made a bigger full house on the river and we chopped the pot. That's what we call some BS. The game switches to Badugi and I'm dealt on the button deuce deuce 3-3 with 4 different suits. I've got 2 wheel cards I can use and 2 wheel cards I'm blocking from other players. I 3-bet to 240 and get 2 callers. Now the only thing I have to decide is which 2 suits to keep. I'd like to tell you I have some type of foolproof scientific method for picking the right suit, but honestly, I just rely on the force.
The force will be with you, always.
I keep 1 black and red card to be fair, and we head to the draw. So far, it doesn't look like the force is looking out, but we are early in the draw, so I still believe. I call the 80 bet and draw 2. Everyone checks to me, so I bet my position and keep both callers. I draw 1. I brick with the jack of hearts and I fold.
You don't believe in the force, do you?
I think it's time for me to find a new way to pick suits. We stick with Badugi for the next hand and I'm dealt 3 to a 6 Badugi with another ace. I try the old 3-bet trick again and I get raised at 320. I make the call, as does one other player, and I toss the ace of hearts. As soon as I abandon the force as my poker religion, I'm rewarded with the first draw 7 Badugi, and I can barely contain myself. I raise to 160 and keep both callers. I stay pat with both of my opponents drawing 1, trying to chase me down. 7 is such a good Badugi, I wouldn't mind if they also made 1, just not lower than a 7. I bet 160 and keep both players. The thing about draw games is there's always a chance to improve, so players never like to fold their potential, and when you've got a made hand, that can work to your advantage. Sometimes on the final draw, players who have made a weak Badugi will check back to players who drew 1, but if your Badugi is good as a 7, I like to extract a little bit more value from players who have made a weak Badugi or think I'm snowing and want to keep me honest. That's what I do here, and it earns me an extra 160 on the river. We stay on the Badugi train for another hand, and I'm dealt a 9-8 Badugi. I 3-bet to 240 and get 4-bet to 320. I make the call, and there are 3 players in the hand. The 4-better is in position and stays pat after me, which means they also have a Badugi, and now the question just becomes, how good is it? The average dealt Badugi is jack high, and I've got that beat, so I'm not inclined to break. In fact, I lead out for a bet of $80 in an effort to show strength and encourage my opponent to break their Badugi just in case I'm beat. In hindsight, a check call strategy may have been better because I doubt a player is going to fold an 8-high Badugi just because I took the betting lead. In fact, the player raises me, indicating that they have a strong hand and trying to encourage me to break. It's a game of chicken now, and we're trying to see who's going to break first. It's not going to be me. I make the call and stay pat. I lead out for 160. This time my opponent slows down and just makes the call. Maybe she isn't that strong after all. I stay pat again, and all three players check the river. I turn over my 9, and my opponent has a better 9. We switch the game to Deuce to 7 Drawmaha, and I'm dealt a 1-card draw to 9-7 in the small blind, and I call the 3-bet to 240. The flop comes Queen 9-9, giving me a set of 9s. I lead out for $80 and get 3 callers. I draw 1, and one player draws 4 cards. I'm used to there being a max 3-card draw, which is usually a rule that's in place to keep the dealer from having to reshuffle the discards. That's not the rule though at the Bellagio, so the draw stands. I pair my 4s on the draw, which pretty much kills my Deuce to 7 hand. Normally I would fold at this point, but I still have trip 9s with a redraw to the full house on the Omaha side of the game, and there are 4 players in the hand, which means there is extra money to split. The turn is the 5 of spades, which misses the full house for me. I call the 160 though. The dealer ran out of cards because of the draw 4 and must use a burn card for the river, which is the 6 of hearts, and I missed the full house once again. I call the final 160 bet, and my opponent also has a 9 and a made full house with the river 6. We stick with Deuce to 7 Drawmaha for the next hand, and I'm dealt a 1-card draw to the 10-9. We get to a flop for cheap this hand with 4 players. The flop comes Ace 10-3, giving me top 2 pair, but it also means I won't be able to toss my ace, and that means I'm practically surrendering the Deuce to 7 side of the pot. Always tough decisions in the mix. I bet 80 and all 3 opponents make the call. I stay pat and everyone draws cards. The turn is another 10, giving me 10s full of aces. I bet 160 and we lose 2 players. The river comes another 3, double pairing the board, and I bet 160 again. My opponent makes the call with a smaller full house, and by some miracle, she can't beat my ace high and Deuce to 7 because she paired and I end up scooping the pot. We switch the game to 7-card stud 8 or better, and I start off with Jack 6 in the hole and a 5 showing. I don't have a good hand, but my opponents have a 10 and 9 door cards, with one of the players being a calling station. I complete the bet hoping that they fold, but instead I get raised twice. I make the call to see how the boards unfold. I make an 8 on 4th Street with my opponents making an 8 and a 6. Their boards still don't look that scary, so I make the call. 5th Street brings me a 7, which gives me an open-ended straight while my opponents make a 5 and 4. Everyone slows down and it checks around, giving me a free chance to hit my straight. I catch a deuce on 6th Street, which gives me a bad 8 low. Both my opponents look like they were going for high hands at the beginning of the hand with the 9 and 10 showing, which means I think they both have at least a pair. There are absolutely no face cards showing, which is concerning, but that also means I think they may have double paired. I think I have the only low hand and should be getting half the pot. This is confirmed when everyone checks to me, so I bet 160. I miss my straight on the river and I pair my 8, giving me an 8 low with a pair of 8s, which I don't think is good for the high. However, the calling station, who I wasn't that worried about, leads out for a bet. I make the call only to find out she started with aces in the hole and a 9 up and got a 6-5-4-3 run out to scoop the pot. I have to admit, that one hurt.
And like that, he's gone.
So just got done playing the 8160 game for the 2nd day in a row, and I got rocked again. I played for 9 hours. Thought that I played a lot better actually, but could just not get anything going. And then in the last couple of hours just dwindled the chips away. So big loss. Got to do some regrouping and rethinking about the poker strategy. And I really need to be hosting my own game where I'm comfortable with all the games I'm playing. But we will figure it out. That's poker. Got to take the good with the bad. All right. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.